everyone, I'm Katie Novak. I am a lifetime educator. I started off as a high school English teacher. I was a middle school English teacher. I was a district reading coordinator, and then was an assistant superintendent of schools. And then I had the amazing opportunity to become an education consultant and work with teachers and leaders all around the world. And I predominantly am focused on how do we design schools and classrooms that give every person the support they need to be wildly successful. And that includes our leaders, our teachers, and most importantly, the kids who we're serving. Okay, the elevator pitch for the Shift to Student Led is this. Teachers are working way too hard doing things for kids that kids are capable of doing themselves, and all the effort that we're putting in is not giving us the results that we deserve or that kids deserve. So the Shift to Student Led is essentially taking these heavy teacher workflows where teachers are doing all the work of planning, of instructing, of assessing, of contacting the grown-ups and the families. And it's recognizing that we can be much more effective when we explicitly teach how to do these things, to our kids, and that we move to more of a facilitator so we can provide like targeted instruction and feedback. But it's really changing the way that we design and deliver instruction. So it is much more about how do we work with our students to create a community of learners where they're carrying the cognitive load of their learning, which is never has been more important because they're competing with robots, for goodness sake. So the human element of learning, finding great resources, having conversations, working together, that's what we are trying to highlight in this book, and that it's a lot more increased engagement for kids, but it's also more balance for teachers. Well, the two frameworks in the book are universal design for learning and blended learning, and both of those are big overarching theoretical frameworks. And so we talk a little bit about like what does it mean to universally design learning and what does it mean to blend learning. And then the book is chock full of strategies that are examples of how you do that. And so, the greatest example that I can use, or the most common I use, is that like universal design for learning is how do you design something that is flexible enough that it would work for everyone. And so I often talk about the dinner party analogy that like if I was going to invite a bunch of people over for dinner, I would not like, okay, you're going to drink a glass of red wine, you're going to have a steak, you're going to have a baked potato, and it's going to have butter, and it's going to have sour cream, and like that's what you're having, no substitutions. And it doesn't matter how delicious that is, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But if I invite like a really wide crowd, I can predict there's going to be people who are vegan or vegetarian or who don't do dairy or aren't drinkers, or for whatever reason, is that one size fits all meal just simply doesn't work for everyone. And a lot of the times we then think as teachers, oh, that means I have to make a meal for every single person. And so now I have to make something for the vegetarians, and I have to make something for my girlfriends who are gluten-free, and I have to make something for my son who's like the pickiest child in the entire world. And now I'm doing all this additional work when I could just do a potluck or a buffet and say, hey, listen, like I have the grill going, I'm gonna have steaks, I'm gonna have zucchinis, like bring what you need. And in doing that, when you shift over to this co-creation, not only are more people involved, there's buy-in, there's ownership, they're like getting what they actually want and need, but it's less work for me. And so some of the strategies that we talk about in the book that are universal design is, for example, a lot of the times we're trying to create these choice boards for students. And it's like, oh, I want to come up with 9 really fun ideas on a tic-tac-toe. Save yourself, don't do that. Think about what really is it that students have to know and do. And then maybe go to like a chat GPT and say, this is the standard on teaching. Can you please create me a very, very clear standards-based rubric? And then I say to kids, okay, this is the non-negotiable. How do you want to do this? Let's make a choice board together. I used to have students all just make a poster and then they met this criteria, but let's have a conversation. And I'm gonna put you in small groups, and together you're gonna come up with some really good ideas, and then we'll do like some nominal voting, and we'll decide what are the 4 best ideas, and then we'll design this choice board together, and then you're gonna decide how you wanna share what you know. And so like we're shifting the responsibility and the creativity and like the workload to the students. And so every single chapter has lots and lots of different examples of things that we can do with our students to increase engagement, to ensure that they have the options they need, but to curate that in a way that we're not lowering expectations, and we really have to level up like the creativity, the innovation. So one little thing I'm doing right now is I started a mini podcast, and it's because when I am working with teachers, I want to try to model universal design for learning as much as possible. So if we're in a full day presentation, I don't want to say, okay, everyone, here's this article that you all need to read, because there's lots of ways to learn. You don't have to all read the same article to learn. You might read an article, you might listen to an article, you might watch a video, you might listen to a podcast. But a lot of the times when we have these great blogs that we want to share or these great tools, they can be devoured or consumed in like 10 minutes. And so you can't really say you can either read this amazing article on like an Edutopia, or you can listen to this 45-minute podcast, because you're off on the logistics of the time. And so I started a mini podcast. Every episode is 10 minutes or less, and that way they can be incorporated into faculty meetings. What's really, really great is when I'm presenting, I'll say, okay, we're gonna start talking about UDL. I want you to build your background on UDL. You can either read this article, you can listen to the article if you want, you can watch this podcast, or you can just do your own research, right? You can use AI tools, you can have a conversation, but like really kind of wet your whistle and think about what you need as your appetizer. And if you want to listen to the podcast, throw in some earbuds and like go for a walk. Or I saw a Starbucks that's like half a mile down the road, put in the order, put it in your car. And this is like how sad education is. Teachers are like, we're allowed to leave the room. I'm like, good gosh, you're highly trained professionals. Yes, you're allowed to leave the room to go get a coffee. And so it is something that is bite-sized, that is meant to be consumed, but is not meant to be required. And so every one of the podcasts also has a blog that you can read or listen to, some tools that you can examine. And it's not for everybody, but if you do like a podcast, it is short and sweet.